My name is Tomasz Agencki. You can call me Thomas. I'm not an economist. I'm not a historian, so there might be a lot of errors in my presentations. I just wanted to start that 1 year ago, Mikołaj called me and put me in front of a seemingly impossible task to produce a documentary about Carl Menger. You know, 1 hour and a half, full-length documentary about Carl Menger. And I was, you know, of course I knew who Carl Menger was back then, even, you know, without being an economist. I knew that somehow. But my first reaction was that it's impossible to do a documentary like that, actually. And we are in the middle of the production, so I have nothing to sell you, actually, today. I cannot show you much. We are in the middle of shooting, so maybe it's still impossible. But then I decided that probably it's a great idea to try to do something that sounds impossible. Because, you know, don't get me wrong, but this subject is dead. Nobody knows who Carl Menger was. I'm sorry. We went there with Mikołaj 2 days ago to the cemetery. Not a single light on Carl Menger's grave. So shame on you, Viennese fellas, but nobody remembers good old Carl today. You know, that's a pity. There were like 5 or 10 candles on Beethoven's grave. So from 0 to 10, yeah, you know where we are. But I know there is a lot of, you know, media content, libertarian media content on YouTube. And my first response when we started, you know, talking and having that ping-pong conversation, how could that movie look like? So my first reaction was how it cannot look like. Where we know what we know, where we don't want to go. We don't want to go to a typical production of liberty-oriented documentary that it's on YouTube, and there is like a plethora of those videos. Probably since 2008, since the boom of YouTube, there has been a lot of those. So let me start with my presentation, how I see how the movie should not look like. He was born in Galicia. Okay, you can spot an error already in here because he was. Can you see the error in that? I'm sorry for it. It was 1840, not 41. You know, the only presentation without errors are the ones that you do at 4 o'clock in the morning before your speech, so this is not the one. So he studies in Vienna. This is the story we know, you know, the obvious, let's say, Mark Skousen version of Carl Menger history. He studies in Vienna, he writes for a newspaper, then he goes to a stock exchange, discovers marginal utility, somehow, suddenly, writes a book that started it all. Rudolf, of course, everybody loves Rudolf, right? Nobody remembers Carl Menger, but everybody has seen Meyerling, so it's great. Everybody loves the book, but not the German guys, suddenly. Big battle starts, of course. Nobody remembers the outcome of the battle. It's so important, but nobody remembers how it finished. Menger teaches other people, defends sound money, retires, and dies. So this is the story of Menger. And actually, if we would go this way, we would fit into the Wikipedia standard of movie production about every dead scientist ever. Is born, studies, writes a book, somebody disagrees, writes another one, or 10, sometimes even translated, has followers and enemies, gets a huge title and dies. Probably, I was thinking about it today, Karl Marx doesn't fit that picture somehow, but most of it. So my idea was to go and start this kind of a ghost searching of Carl Menger. You know, not to produce a movie that will, I don't know, bring more followers into the Austrian School of Economics, that will promote the ideology. Don't get me wrong, we're on the same ship. I'm here not by any accident, but like the first idea was create a movie that may be interesting. You know, go and find those places and try to, I don't know, rethink the ideas that, you know, yeah, he entered the stock exchange, he discovered the marginal utility, and the moment you say marginal utility, basically, half of your viewers are gone. I'm sorry. I mean, this is hard. I don't even know how to explain marginal utility to my folks, to my neighbors, you know. I think I understand it. So maybe, So maybe let's go to Nowy Sącz and try to find the places and a situation that shaped Carl Menger somehow. Because, you know, on several occasions, several people asked me, people who are absolutely like zero into libertarianism, Austrian School of Economics, never heard about Rothbard, never, or Mises or whatever. Ludwig von Moses. What? So, and what's the next project you're working on? And I had to like squeeze that story into like the elevator pitch, but like only from 0 to 1 floor, like the shortest pitch I can ever do. And I started like, I don't know, talking about like inequalities, for example. You know, we had this guy who was born, to quote a famous investor and TV personality, in a shithole country at the end of the empire, and like 28 years later, he's in the middle of the empire, and 3 years later, he's the teacher of a next crown. He's the teacher to Rudolf, and he's not teaching him biology, he's teaching political economy. So, come on, man, like 30 years, right? So that's a huge step. That's like to the moon. Especially when you think that this is 1870, 1880, no internet, no Wikipedia, you know, and he got there. So this is a beautiful story. We already mentioned, Christoph mentioned the library. And as you probably see, I decided that in the second part of my presentation, I'm not going to use any words. I mean, on screen, of course I'm going to speak, but there will be no words, because I wanted to, and I still want to, and I'm working on it, to find the pictures that will stay with us. Not the data, you know, not the proportion, not the graphs, not the Excel type of filmmaking, and you know. So we want to produce a movie that is not edited in PowerPoint. It's not just another presentation where you know, talking heads are just like spewing facts to you. They're so smart, right? We're going to have a lot of talking heads because, you know, the only people who know about Carl Menger actually are economists and historians. So yeah, they will appear in that movie, but we need to find a balance. We need to find those pictures. So everybody talks about those books of Carl Menger that we can right now find. Half of it is in the Duke University, the other half in Japan, or maybe like a bigger chunk is in Japan. But there are also stories, and the more I started reading about Carl Menger, and the more I started reading what Carl Menger wrote, not to learn what he wants to tell me, but to see like who Carl Menger actually was. What kind of guy would write a book like Grundsätze? What kind of examples was he using? And we know that one of his first memories is that library, his father's library. We also know that he was a bibliophile and he was collecting books, and we know the story that after Carl Menger died, actually because of that collection, his family could survive during the hyperinflation because his wife was selling those books. So it's not 100% in Duke and Japan. Some of those books just paid the rent in 1920s before the hyperinflation in Weimar Republic. But actually, I started looking for like you know, history bridges. I'm gonna talk a little bit of artistic gibberish right now. That, in my opinion, this library, and the fact that Menger was collecting books, is not only about, you know, aggregating knowledge, getting more books to read, to produce your own books. In my opinion, he was trying to recreate his family home, almost to the end of his life. And you might call this is like a affordable psychology. That's just only my interpretation, but I'm saying it this way. He was rebuilding his family home throughout all of his life. He had an absent father because his father died when Carl was 7 or 8 years old. It doesn't really matter that much. And then he's friends with Rudolf, with Crown Prince Rudolf. You know, Crown Prince Rudolf also had issues with his father. He was also quite, you know, you cannot say he was absent because he was everywhere. But when it comes to relations with Rudolf, you know, I think that Carl Menger and Rudolf had some common topics to talk about. They could be friends on that. And as we know, Rudolf also was collecting books. And I think that Carl tried to recreate that cozy family picture of his childhood. And then he, as we know, maybe this corroborates the story, maybe not, but basically we know that he was like 60 years old or something when he had his own son. Right? Carl, the K, Carl Jr., right? And suddenly he could recreate that picture, but this time he was the father in that picture. He was not the son. You know, maybe this sounds romantic, maybe it's cheap, But people like it, you know. It's a story. It's more humane. There are no numbers to remember, you know. That's just a speculation. I don't know if that's true. But if you follow those footsteps, you know, those people, those things are like pop up. And when this is the Maniowy village, because as we know, he spent only 2 years in Nowy Sącz, and then they moved to the Maniowy. These are not the actual places. I mean, this is the church of Maniowy. We don't know how it looked like in 1885 because there was no photo cameras in Maniowy back then. No Instagram, nothing. But actually, if you read Grundsätze today, his famous book, it's a story of Maniowy brought to a book, to an economic book. When he talks about cigarettes, about like those bushels and water and rice and every product, if you look at it this way, he's using examples from his childhood. Then when he moves from Maniowy to study, oh yeah, and he loved fishing actually. This is very important thing. It doesn't sound much. It cannot sound. It may not sound important at first when you just read a biography, and then he went fishing. Okay, but this is a very important point that he was fishing actually. But then when he moves to Krakow, this is how his gymnasium looks like now. I only could deliver the Google Maps picture. I don't have a better one for a moment. You know that he was like 14 years old and he had to teach younger kids to survive. He was a teacher when he was like 12, 13, 14 years old. He started teaching really early on. And he also had to be an entrepreneur. You know, that was the way he would pay for his room, for his living. Then he goes to Prague. And actually, this is the place that he was studying. This is the Carolinum. This is the place, the actual place. I've been there 2 months ago to film this place and see that. This is the exact place that he was sitting in and gaining knowledge. And his first conflict with the Dean Schneider of this university was about the quality of teaching. Because then Menger was like 18 years old or 20 years old. I don't really remember that. Or 22, something like that. 1863 or something. Menger is furious because he says that this teaching is bullshit. The quality of your teaching is very wrong. And this is actually the beginning of the Methodenstreit later, because he already, you know, it starts. So everything starts in Menger's youth, and then you can go for it. I'm also searching for every place that Menger lived or worked in, and this is the market square, and this is actually the picture from 1860s. So this is exactly the moment when Menger was living there in Prague. So that's how it looks like right now and how it looks on the old postcard. Yeah, he goes back to Praga, to Vienna from Praga. We're following him. Exactly, and we have that stock exchange situation. And you know what? Like, I don't want to say that von Hayek is wrong, but he says that the Grundsätze, this ideology, was after. I mean, Menger came up with these ideas after he worked on a stock exchange. The official version is that he discovered this marginal utility while working as a journalist for Wiener Zeitung, and he was writing about a stock exchange. But in my opinion, so I have like a third option, everything settled way before. Even though we know that when he started writing Grundsätze, he was more into, he was not really the a priori kind of guy. He was more with the German school of historians. But then he was writing that book and something clicked, and he went this way. Because of course, you can always ask, you know, he had a brother, Anton, who was like a, you know, full-fledged socialist. And he had a brother, Carl, what was it? Max, right? I don't really know about Max's ideology. He was liberal, but I don't know in which sense, actually. But yeah, you're going to learn from the documentary. Let's not spoil everything, right? So they also, you know, they are coming from the same family, from the same background, and they went like 3 different directions, you know. So it's not that it's always going to be the same way. So this is actually a very much against historians, the German historians, right? You have 3 kids from the same family, same background, and all of them going in different directions. So how can you predict anything, right? Actually. Okay, so this is Rudolf and his father, as we know. They went fishing together as well. Let's not forget about that. And fishing was one of the, like, very little things that Menger would do outside reading and writing and teaching. about banking. So fishing was like his thing to do somehow, and of course it was that for Rudolf. So I'm trying to find any place that is connected somehow to Menger, and this is Berlin actually, and they are sharing a street with Schmeller, which is a joke in my opinion, but a nice one. What else? Again, we have that library. I don't know why actually, because I already told you the story. Yeah, and I'm looking for pictures. That's the last apartment that Menger lived. That was here in Vienna. And I'm trying also to sneak to see the stairs and to see how those places look like. So I'm sneaking with a camera to the buildings. I don't know if it's legal. I hope not, actually. Yeah, so we have that First World War. This is the place that you can find, you know, the university. There's this commemorating, how do you call that, plaque or thing like that. It was a hospital during the First World War. Okay, this is old Menger. I mean, so I have a lot of theories, and maybe they are wrong theories about that movie, but really, I hope it's going to be interesting because it's not typically, you know, about economy. I have 5 more minutes. I'm already finished, actually. So, you know, and we have to like bring those examples and rewrite them to some extent. So if they are talking about diamonds and water, maybe we should use, I don't know, Bitcoin and energy, because this is more up to date, right? I was looking for anything that I would connect somehow, you know, Menger with the more common themes that we have on social media, but actually anything I found is that the Austro-Hungarian Empire was like divided into Cis-Leitania and Trans-Leitania. I don't know if that would that would fly, but that's an accident. Okay, so we have old Grandpa Menger, and that's probably all I wanted to say. I don't want to sell this. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to sell that project to you. I just want you to know that we're doing anything that's possible to make it a watchable film. So people outside who are not with us here today will enjoy that movie. And if you can contribute in any way, you can criticize anything that I've presented. You can, you know, give me some other, I don't know, trivia about Menger. I would be happy to know that I can count on you. Oh, and this is me with Carl, as you can see. So yeah, Carl lives. He absolutely, you know, he endorses the production officially. So it's an official biography of Carl Menger, and this is the moment that Miko I was talking about. That's the moment where we, how was it, like 8 months ago, 10 months ago in Nowy Sącz. That's the roundabout with Carl Menger on it in Nowy Sącz. Oh yeah, and the one important thing about the most important place in Menger's life, the Maniowe residence, the one that I told you that he was living there when he was young, where everything started back then. This is how Maniowe looks like right now. This is his village. Because like 20 or 30 years ago, it was put underwater to build a dam. And the funny thing is that you can go fishing there now. Thank you very much.
I had one quick question. I was curious to see when you're talking about expanding, reaching different people that are not only the economic sphere, but also consumers, newer people coming up. Do you feel that you're starting from zero when it comes to reaching consumers, when it comes to reaching the general population, or do you feel that there is enough information about Menger out there that someone will have an inclination to have a starting point? Or do you feel you have to educate them from the get-go and really teach them about this character of history to get them started down the path?
How does that microphone work? Yeah, this way. It's impossible to put everything into 1 hour 20 movie. So we have to cut. We have to be brutal about it, and I have to assume that that my viewers are coming from absolutely, you know, different cultures, different planets, also almost. Yeah. So it needs to be basic. It needs to be a gateway drug to more knowledge. I would hate that movie to be, you know, over weight with you know, theories and heavy knowledge and all that. So it has to be it has to be poppy to some extent. It cannot be idiotic. So you know, you have to find this level of and balance it somehow. So this is also very hard because Menger's life is like several movies in one, and you have to go everywhere and talk about history and try to, like, you know, put it all together. So yeah, but this is going to be a gateway. It's actually, this is our, I mean, I'm looking at this movie as, how do you call that in this MCU universe when you have the Avengers and whatnot? Origin movie, right? Yeah. So let's call it an origin movie for the Austrian school.
One other thing that is important is that the many contexts, because about Menger, as I've mentioned, there is zero knowledge about Menger. Even in his hometown, at the university in which he got his doctorate, almost no one knows about it. They were genuinely surprised when we were looking through the archives, stuff like this. But a general context is known, but still known only to the people, for example, in Poland or in the old empire, like, for example, the poverty in Galicia, which was highly influential in Menger early days. He was alive when the uprising, peasant uprising against the nobility happened. There was basically blood running through the streets, not far from he was based at the time. But again, this context wouldn't be understandable to the broader audience that we want to reach. That's why we are looking for this more universal themes that Tomek was speaking about.
Clifford Thies, U.S. If this is a origins movie, it's also a recovery movie. And so you might want to talk about the eclipse of Menger and the Austrian school by the dominant Anglo-American school.
You know, naming using that origin hashtag would sound like a promise that we're going to continue with, you know, number 2, number 3, and the second trilogy, the third trilogy, and TV series, the ultimate, whatever, you know, there is, yeah, and our own McDrive sets and whatnot. Yeah, that would be nice to actually sell the Austrians in McDonald's. That would be great.
There is one other thing that we want to avoid is, because I think many of us share this feeling of isolation. I mean, it's changing in recent years, but most of us in our universities or professional context, well, there are not that many Austrians to talk to. I think that's the common experience. We wouldn't want this all to feel like a story of something far gone into the future, something hopeless. We want to show the story of a man who started basically from nothing, and that's true, and went on to change the world, and truly in a meaningful change the world with an impact that lasts to this day. And we want this to show that a Menger legacy, even though he himself might not be that well remembered, is alive and well today, not only in Poland, not only in the US, but all over the world. And that's maybe insane, but that's the real ambition behind this project.
Well, we don't have any more time, so with this I would like to end and thank the Mises Institute Poland. If you have any questions and suggestions, they're here for the whole conference, so do add them. And please be on time after the recess for the keynote speech. Thank you.
Which is in 10 minutes, right? Thank you very much.